Listen carefully, because this is not about motivation. This is about transformation. What if the real reason people don't respect you isn't your talent, your intelligence, or your potential, but your lack of discipline? What if the world secretly measures your power not by what you say, but by what you consistently control? And what if I told you that the most feared individuals in history were not the loudest, the strongest, or the most emotional, but the most disciplined? There is a silent aura that surrounds a disciplined mind. It makes people uncomfortable. It makes them observe you differently. It makes them question themselves in your presence. And Machiavelli understood this long before modern psychology even existed. He never preached motivation. He studied control. Control over impulses. Control over reactions. Control over image. Control over self. Because in a chaotic world, the most terrifying person is not the aggressive one. It is the one who cannot be emotionally moved. Stay with me until the end, because the final rule of Machiavellian discipline is the one principle that separates admired men from untouchable ones, and once you understand it, you will never see discipline the same way again. Most people think discipline is waking up early, working hard, and avoiding distractions. That is surface-level discipline. Mechanical discipline, predictable discipline. But the discipline Machiavelli indirectly respected was psychological discipline, the kind that is invisible, the kind that reshapes your presence, the kind that makes people feel that you are operating on a different mental frequency. Look at history. Kings did not rule because they were the most emotional. Strategists did not win because they reacted quickly. Power figures did not dominate because they chased validation. They mastered one thing: internal order in an external chaos. And here is the uncomfortable truth most people avoid. Undisciplined people are easy to control. They react fast. They speak too much. They reveal emotions instantly. They chase pleasure immediately. They abandon long-term strategy for short-term comfort. Machiavelli observed human nature with brutal honesty. He saw that people are impulsive, emotional, and predictable, which means the person who is disciplined automatically becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability creates psychological power. Think about this deeply. When someone cannot control their habits, their speech, their attention, or their emotions, they expose their weaknesses without realizing it. But when someone is deeply disciplined, they reveal nothing. They become difficult to read, difficult to manipulate, difficult to influence. And that alone changes how the world treats them. Now imagine two individuals in the same room. One constantly checking their phone, reacting emotionally, speaking impulsively, seeking approval. The other sits calmly, listens more than they speak, moves deliberately, and reacts with measured precision. Who appears more powerful? Who appears more dangerous? Who commands silent respect without demanding it? Discipline is not loud. It is intimidating in silence. This is why Machiavellian philosophy does not glorify emotional expression. It respects strategic restraint, because restraint signals control, and control signals strength. But here is where it gets deeper. True discipline is not built when life is easy. It is built in moments of internal resistance. When you want to quit but continue. When you want to react but stay silent. When you want to indulge but withdraw. Each of these moments forges psychological armor. And over time, something strange begins to happen. Your mind stops negotiating with weakness. Your impulses lose authority over your decisions. Your emotions stop dictating your behavior. At that stage, discipline is no longer effort. It becomes identity. Most people fail because they rely on motivation. Motivation is emotional. Discipline is structural. Motivation says, I feel like doing this today. Discipline says, this gets done regardless of how I feel. Machiavelli never trusted emotions as a foundation for power. He trusted consistency, because consistency builds reputation, and reputation builds influence. When people observe that you are disciplined every day, not occasionally, not when convenient, but relentlessly, they begin to categorize you differently. Not as average, not as reactive, but as controlled. and controlled individuals are psychologically intimidating. Another layer most people ignore is disciplined silence. Undisciplined minds over-explain. They justify themselves. They defend every action. They speak to fill discomfort. But a disciplined mind understands the strategic weight of silence. Silence creates curiosity. Silence creates tension. Silence forces others to reveal more than intended. This is not manipulation. This is psychological positioning. Now let's talk about emotional discipline, the rarest and most powerful form. Anyone can act disciplined when life is stable, but when insulted, when ignored, when underestimated, when disrespected, that is where true discipline is revealed. Most people react instantly. They argue, they defend, they escalate, they expose their emotional triggers. But the disciplined individual observes first, analyzes second, responds last. This delay alone creates psychological dominance. Because when someone cannot provoke you, they lose power over you. And Machiavelli repeatedly emphasized the danger of being emotionally predictable. If your reactions are predictable, your behavior becomes controllable. If your behavior is controllable, your influence decreases. But when your reactions are measured, calm, and strategic, people hesitate before challenging you. Now consider the discipline of routine, not the aesthetic routines social media promotes, but strategic routines that eliminate decision fatigue. When your day is structured, your mind conserves energy for important decisions. Undisciplined individuals waste mental energy on trivial choices, distractions, and emotional fluctuations. Disciplined individuals automate their behaviors. They remove randomness. They remove chaos. They remove internal debate. And this creates mental clarity that others mistake for confidence. Let's go even deeper into Machiavellian perception psychology. People do not respect effort they cannot see. They respect consistency they can observe. If today you are focused, tomorrow distracted, next week motivated, then lazy again, your identity becomes unstable in the eyes of others. But if your discipline appears constant, people assume strength even without proof. Perception becomes reality. Another critical dimension is delayed gratification. The disciplined mind understands timing. It does not chase immediate pleasure at the cost of long-term authority. Machiavelli admired long-term thinkers because strategic patience outperforms emotional urgency in every power structure. When you delay pleasure, delay reactions, delay responses, and delay gratification, you begin to operate on a strategic timeline rather than an emotional timeline. And this alone separates leaders from followers psychologically. Now here is something uncomfortable. Extreme discipline will isolate you, not because people hate you, but because your standards reflect their lack of control. Your consistency exposes their inconsistency. Your restraint highlights their impulsiveness. And unconsciously, that makes them uneasy. They may call you cold. They may call you distant. They may say you've changed. But in reality, you have simply become harder to influence. This is where most people break. They abandon discipline to feel socially accepted again. They dilute their structure to avoid standing out. But Machiavellian philosophy warns against this exact weakness. Respect is not earned by blending in. It is earned by demonstrating internal authority. Let's now discuss the discipline of self-image. How you see yourself determines how consistently you act. If you see yourself as someone who tries to be disciplined, your behavior will be inconsistent. But if you see yourself as a disciplined individual, your actions align automatically. Identity-driven discipline is far stronger than forced discipline. And over time, your posture changes. Your speech slows. Your decisions sharpen. Your emotional volatility decreases. You become composed. And composure is psychologically intimidating. Now we approach a deeper Machiavellian layer, strategic endurance. Most people start strong and collapse under pressure. Disciplined individuals start controlled and remain stable under pressure. Endurance signals superiority in competitive environments. Because consistency outlasts intensity. The world is not conquered by bursts of motivation. It is shaped by sustained discipline over long periods. People often ask why disciplined individuals appear dangerous. Not physically, psychologically. The answer is simple. They are less controllable, less reactive, less dependent on validation, less driven by impulse. And any person who cannot be emotionally manipulated becomes difficult to dominate socially. Now, as we move toward the final psychological layer, understand this. Discipline is not about perfection. It is about dominance over self. You will feel resistance. You will feel boredom. You will feel mental fatigue. You will feel temptation. But each time you act in alignment with discipline instead of impulse, you reinforce neural authority over emotional chaos. Now, as we move toward the final psychological layer, understand this. Discipline is not about perfection. It is about dominance over self. You will feel resistance. You will feel boredom. You will feel mental fatigue. You will feel temptation. But each time you act in alignment with discipline instead of impulse, you reinforce neural authority over emotional chaos. And slowly, your presence changes. People sense it, even if they cannot explain it. Now, the final Machiavellian rule of discipline, the one most people never understand. Become so disciplined that your behavior is no longer influenced by external approval, emotional fluctuations, or temporary discomfort. At this stage, you are not performing discipline. You are embodying it. You wake up with structure. You speak with intention. You react with calculation. You move with purpose. And the world begins to treat you differently, not because you demanded respect, but because your consistency silently commanded it. This is why true discipline scares people, not because it is extreme, but because it is rare. In a world addicted to distraction, impulse, and emotional reactivity, a deeply disciplined mind appears almost unnatural. And that unnatural consistency creates psychological authority. So the question is not whether discipline is hard. The real question is this: are you willing to become so internally controlled that external chaos loses its influence over you? Because once you reach that level, you are no longer easily provoked, no longer easily distracted, no longer easily manipulated. And in Machiavellian philosophy, the person who cannot be controlled cannot be dominated.